Hi, welcome to a special edition of Difference Makers. We're at workshop, or we were at workshop. We're a couple weeks later. I'm here with Ian Hockley. Ian was our keynote speaker. He's the founder of Dylan's Wings, which will start. Unfortunately, his son was killed in the tragedy at Sandy Hook. Welcome, Ian.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks for spending a few moments with us and with our audience. Most of us, you started off your keynote presentation talking about Americans, about soccer, which you call football, because we all know that you're from England. But you talked about the second half testing you. Sometimes the first half you're going good, but your second half got tested in the December 14th in 2012 when your son was one of the ones tragically killed in Sandy Hook. Just give us briefly the emotions that you had on that day and a couple days afterwards.
Yeah, that soccer analogy just seemed to fit so well. You know, that second half of the game when things start going badly and you've got to pick yourself up. And December the 14th was just most absolutely that lowest possible point. And just the way the whole day unfolded, from hearing some news that you didn't know would impact you, to suddenly realizing how great and tragic this was, but still nobody being able to communicate with you. We were in that firehouse, the parents of the soon-to-be released news that they were the victims, but just this dread of not knowing, and then finally the news being broken to us, and it was almost like being hit with a hammer and you shattering into pieces. There really was that feeling of glass shattering, and then even in that moment, having to put some pieces back together just to take the very next step, the very next step of telling relatives like grandparents, the very next step of just going home to speak to Dylan's brother Jake and tell him the news. And then, you know, everything after that was just trying to take that next little step, not even thinking what will things be like a week from now, a month now, a year from now. Just how do we just make the next step? And being told of all the things we'd have to do, funeral, memorial, police report, and all those just things that were never part of your life in the first half when things were going well. That was just the greatest challenge, just to take it one step at a time.
We'll move on, because I know actually during your presentation you talked about there was a moment in the police car when that you were like, I have to remember all these little details, as I have to capture this moment. Can you explain that?
Yeah, and right then and there, actually from really the day of the shooting to the Sunday, that's 2 days, I have no memory of what we did. I think we just lay curled up in bed. But then hearing that the president was coming to town was like a spur to action, and that we would meet him and that there would be this vigil. And that moment of being in the police car, hurtling through intersections against a red light with lights going, and realizing if things weren't so terribly tragic, it would be awesome. You don't get that chance in life in any normal circumstance, almost like VIP or presidential treatment. So to have to capture those moments and remember them, because as such a terrible tragedy had happened to us, if that's all we could define our life by, that's all we had. And my story later that I share about having to explain to Jake how if all you can remember is the sadness and the tragedy, you'll sink. And to try and capture all of the fantastic, amazing things that life still does have to offer, that will give you some balance back in life. So that moment there, and I think that's what spurred my memory back into action, and then those positive things giving us the energy to go on.
And during that vigil, you noticed a woman, Laura, and I would love to actually meet this woman, but when, you know, someone's going to break down because all the families were there, she would just talk softly to them. She visited with you. Can you talk about, and it kind of leads into Dylan's story and Dylan's Wings and the butterfly.
It really does. And you know, Laura was part of the president's retinue. And while at the end of the vigil, a lot of people left, I decided to just speak to her and ask her who she was. And I think if I hadn't made that connection, many of the things that unfolded afterwards could have been very different. You never know what they would have been. But for her to then say she would come and visit the family the next day, and to come and talk with us. And just by talking about our memories of Dylan, and most especially the story where he would jump up and down and flap his hands, and how he described himself to Nicole as a beautiful butterfly. And Laura taking that and building on it and talking about the butterfly effect and how, ripples, impacts accumulate and ripple outwards and will change the world, I think gave Nicole the impetus to make the speech she did at Dylan's memorial. Laura bringing us butterfly brooches, she did not need to, but she came back and she bought those for us. And really just embedding in our minds and in our hearts this idea of the butterfly really made things unfold in a very special way. It became part of Dylan's Foundation's logo. It became the logo for the Wingman Program. The butterfly effect is big about what we talk about. So that without that real chance meeting with Laura, things could have taken a hugely different turn.
So, and we should explain the Wingman's and the you talked about the butterfly effect. Dylan needed to have a wingman is someone to look over you. Dylan had autism, so he had some difficulties with life. So why was it important that the wingman also is important?
Yeah, and I think of him, if he's just a little boy that needed a wingman every day to help role model for him, to show him the way, to give him a little bit of extra help, and then he can do anything. He could do anything. He's an incredible little boy, and then all of our children, indeed all of us, right, at some point need a wingman. We need someone there with just to say the right thing, to hold our hand, to pick us up when we're down. That's carried on into the spirit of the program. If we all need that, then we need everybody to be that person. We need everybody to be observant of others around them, to have the courage to reach out to someone they probably don't know, because a wingman is a wingman for everyone. And then just the empathy to say, I see your problem, I see what you're struggling with. I was hurting once and I see you're hurting, I'm here to help you. All of those qualities of a person are what we're trying to instill in the children that join Wingman.
And before we get into the details of the Wingman program, first of all, you were overwhelmed with a lot of generosity from donations, but you still had to get a program up and running. You had to network with a lot of people. You had to raise funds.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you had to make something complete. So how did you go about networking and also raising funds?
Yeah, and you're right. There was a huge amount of money donated right after the shooting. I think when people see a tragedy like this, they feel powerless, but they know if they can give some money that can do some good. And so we took that money and we were using it to make grants to other organizations. But there's a lot of organizations in need, so that money started to disappear very quickly, and we made some great grants to help people. So to raise some more money, I can't do a lot, but I know how to run, and I had a lot of people around me used to run. So we started entering endurance races, Ragnar relays, 200-mile, 24-hour team races, marathons, ultra marathons, because people will donate when they see people really pushing themselves outside of their comfort zone for a good cause. And so running became a huge part of what we did, both building community and raising the funds as well.
And you just did the New York City Marathon, was that a week ago?
Yep.
Yeah, a week ago, right?
For the second time, yeah.
All right. So do you need more people to run?
We're always looking for runners, right?
If you want, I will join you and help you raise the funds.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
You're on the team.
I'm on the team. I have to go tell my wife that, though. So that's a positive. But tell us a little bit about the Wingman, because what I kind of like about the program is that it's kids helping kids. You're really training kids to be like almost a big brother, for lack of a better term, or big sister.
Yeah.
So just briefly, and then the kids are engaged in this too.
Yes. So at the core of Wingman, it's a social and emotional learning program, if you want to use adult speak. But what's both unique and powerful about it is it's youth-led. So the students, or because we're in dance studios, the dancers, or we're in an after-school club, the kids that attend, the older kids are the leaders. We train them. We train them about what it means to be a wingman, and help them realize within themselves those superpowers they've got, and they just need a chance to talk about it and share. The program is full of super engaging experiential activities, if you want to use the technical term, but it's team bonding and trust building really at an emotional level. The kids that come into the teams really bond, really get to know each other quite deeply. They get to trust each other, and that allows them to turn around and take the program out, usually to their younger peers. So they'll be working across their school, across their dance studio, across their youth club, and they take the program out there. So instead of us adults talking to them like the classic Charlie Brown, wah, 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 it's kids talking to kids, using their language, knowing the things that, the challenges they're facing today. And we see it from the outside, right? We talk about this epidemic of social isolation and exclusion, which the kids talk about as loneliness. They don't talk about isolation, but they talk about loneliness and not being able to connect and the difficulty making friends. The program is able to and naturally allows them to do that. About, we don't all have to be friends, but can we learn to be friendly with each other? So kids at the center, leading the program, doing these great activities that allow them to engage, but then also generating the empathy. Because as people really start to break down the walls between them, the empathy starts to build. And we always talk, empathy is this super long journey of kindness and generosity and respect, compassion and hope and resilience. All those things get you towards empathy. And that's the ultimate goal, because empathy will counter the epidemic of social isolation.
And so you have more and more kids in schools. I shouldn't say just schools. You mentioned dance studios. That's part of your networking. You're going to, because kids do other things besides go to school. So how do you see that progressing? Do kids want to join that program, or are you called something else?
Yeah, this came out of, to introduce a program somewhere, we have to use that word. We have to say program. But we're more and more reflecting, nobody wants to be part of a program. A program is something that's done to you, that you're forced into. And we're hearing the kids say more and more, this is a movement. There are, roughly speaking, about 20,000 kids have experienced Wingman. And isn't it more inspiring to be part of a movement? Because a movement is something people join and they get behind and they take out and they want to spread. And this really is their program. The trainers finish their 2 days with the kids and say, this isn't our program, this isn't Ian's program. This is yours. You do with it what you will, and that's when it becomes that idea of a movement. And if we think about what's going on in the world today, maybe around climate change or just looking at the planet, those are movements, those are not programs. So I'm really inspired by the kids that take that ownership, make it their own, and then take it forward. And
one of your other messages, and I thought it was an important one that we all, when we experience death, we sometimes have regrets. And you looked back and said, maybe I shouldn't, with Dylan's diagnosis, I should have handled it maybe a little bit better. Was that one of your messages looking back, that we should be more in the moment? Definitely.
It's often when we lose someone, we really reflect on our entire experience with them. And for me, it was 18 months or 2 years, right after his diagnosis, of just a fracture of our relationship, all on my fault, because of, and I think I say in the speech about, what will he be? What will he become? Because you have such high hopes for your child to excel and be the best they can be. And getting over that, certainly, and reconnecting with him was wonderful, but to then lose him so soon afterwards, I can only reflect and share to others, you're going to regret any time that you lose with someone that through fault or no fault you fracture. But get ahead of that by never getting there and looking at the people around you in your life right now, and those ones that you love but you're just disconnected with for whatever reason, and just find a way to not lose another day in your relationship with them, to heal the rift as quick as you can. Because in my case, we've lost Dylan, and what if you lost that person tomorrow? Now, you probably won't, but that's still no reason not to deal with that right then and there. reform your connection with them and not have those regrets.
This is like the final thought. I'm taken back that you have taken a tragedy and trying to turn it into a positive. The legacy of Dylan is one of hope. How did you come about being so positive and turn it into is it because of Dylan that you wanted to make everything positive?
Thanks for using that word, Ray. You used hope. And that really is a big thing of what we're trying to do alongside empathy, because I don't just think, I hear kids are losing hope. They just see this big dark world out there, and they see it because the media shoves it into all of our faces all the time, all this bad stuff. So they need hope that there's a better world. My hope came from those people around me. You know, right from almost the moment the news got out, even to this day, this army, this group of friends came and lifted us up. You know, people say, how did you get the strength to get up every day? I said, because these people dragged us out of the bed. They wouldn't let us be down and out. They lifted us up and brought us forward, and they carry us to this day. And I'm either repaying their generosity, gratitude, and support, and they would say they don't want repayment, they did it out of love. But I'm able to go forward because of those people. They lifted us up and they brought us forward. So that's what kept me going. And then the kids that are part of the program and how they take to Dylan's memory, even today, 7 years on, where I'm speaking to high schoolers now who were in elementary school at the time of the shooting. Mm-hmm. And so clearly soon I'm going to be speaking to high schoolers who weren't even born, but they can still relate. They can have empathy, because even at that age, they've lost someone. They've seen a family member die, maybe even too soon. They can relate to that. We have that connection. And while we still have that, I'll keep giving the message, and I'll keep giving the message of hope that no matter what happens, there are people around you who love you and care for you and will help you go on.
Well, Ian, I can't say it. Just your story is inspiring, and your positivity and the hope that you're putting forward is just, I'm so impressed. So that's Ian Hockley from Dylan's Wings of Change.